So today's chapter is about culture. What do you think about when you think about culture? What is culture in your own terms? What does culture mean to you? Yes.
Tradition.
Traditions. Yes. What else? Ellen.
Shared set of values, beliefs.
Values and beliefs, yes, which kind of form the traditions also. What else? Yes. Food. Yummy. Yes, food culture. Yeah. What else? Yes.
Heritage. Heritage.
Heritage,
So
yes.
there's like history and like stories and like kind of mythos.
Yes, there's all kinds of heritage saga stories and things like that that form a culture. Just like an individual is formed by the way what they have been exposed to and what they have lived through throughout their life, that makes up their current values and state of mind and traditions and opinions and so forth and attitudes. Same thing with the entire culture of a certain region of the world, right? It's all based on a lot of historical events that happened also. So defining culture and its characteristics. Culture is learned behavior. Nobody is born with a culture. When you are born, you're like a blank piece of paper with nothing on it. And then things get imprinted on you based on how you are raised and how the environment you grow up in and the things that influence your mind, right? It's a way of life for one group of people living in a single, related, and independent community, right? It can be a small or a very large one. Characteristics of culture is culture, again, is not inherited, it's learned, right? It's nearly impossible to change an entire country's culture. There are always cultural shifts and changes in any part of the world, more so in some parts than others, right? But you cannot change the culture entirely, right? A global firm must ascertain the level of importance of various aspects of culture in the foreign market it serves and recognize these aspects when doing business overseas. So if you are going global with your company or you want to open operations in another country, you really have to explore the culture of that country in order to be successful. Because you don't want to look like you don't respect them, or you don't want to look like you don't care about them. You don't want to impose your culture on their culture either. It's not a war. You're going there to benefit from them, right? So you better make an effort to adjust the way you do certain things. Not everything, but certain things you will have to adjust, right? Companies' operations need to recognize and adjust to the cultural environment of the countries and the global that the global company serves. So you can't do business as usual when you go to other countries. Elements of culture: verbal communication, messages, actual current contents intended to be conveyed to the receiver. So what the message says. So there's a message diagram which is very simple. So you have a message in your mind, right? It's in your mind. Now you put that message into words and you're trying to put that message into the other person's mind. So I'm the sender of the message. The other person receives the words that I put into, where I put my thoughts into those words. And now the other person receives those words and has to interpret and decode those words. In that process, a lot can actually go wrong, especially if you come from different languages, right? And even if you have learned the language, there are other things in the, besides just the words and the translation that could have an impact on how you deliver the message or the choice of words and so forth that might come across very differently than you intended it, right? And the way people communicate is really different, right? Nonverbal communication is also it also varies. So, you know, the tone of voice, gestures, eye contact, body position, facial grimaces, and other body language that accompany verbal communication. Can somebody think of something that might be typical to do in the general culture in the United States that is not typical in another culture? Ellen.
In the United States, it's very common to shake hands when greeting someone, which is not the preferred greeting method of a lot of other cultures around the world.
Yes, what other cultures would not shake hands?
A lot of East Asian cultures in particular, they bow.
They bow, that's right, yeah, good example, yes. Diego?
I said in the United States, it's kind of pretty typical for like people to cross their arms. I think it's actually in Turkey that you
That's what they say. I never really heard that.
At least in
A
business.
lot of textbooks say that, and I've never, I mean, in general, I think when you sit or stand like this, you're kind of closing yourself up, right? But it's not offensive in Turkey. I do this, and I don't know why textbooks say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, it's, we might do it more commonly, like, kind of like this casually, right? Other ones, yes,
Well, this is like a vocal thing, but we say
That's
like in
fine.
California, we say like a lot, or we have certain slang depending on the region, and we have different accents as well. Like there's a southern accent, but just in general, Americans have a way of talking that's more straightforward than other countries.
more direct.
Yeah, more direct. Like a lot of Americans aren't afraid to just be blunt and just outright say something. Whereas in like, for example, my extended family is very Japanese, and one of the things that they do, they really kind of beat around the bush.
They wanna be
when wanna say
polite,
something.
right?
Yeah, they're very. There's like this kind of saying that like you're not supposed to tell someone how you feel about them to their face.
Mhm.
You wait until you have to be totally polite to them when they're there. You wait until after they leave, and then that's when you express how you really
Talk
feel
behind their
about
back.
them.
In other words, it's
It's literally like it's a
all
literally a
cultures,
rule.
but all cultures talk about Americans talk about other people behind their back as well, just because
Oh,
they
yeah.
say something, yeah. Yeah, but, can you all have a side conversation, please? We can talk about what you're saying. I just want to, get everybody's hand that was raised. Alexandra?
I think that tonally also the US, whenever they speak, either to the public or in like business meetings, they're very loud.
Loud, yes.
And it's more of a volume thing. Sometimes it's not even, there's a very like boisterous presence that, that someone from the US speaks where you visit some other nations and it's not quite as
As loud. Yes, exactly. Yes, Southeast Asian nation, for example, they speak with a lower tone of voice. I can even tell that in my classrooms, when American students have something to contribute versus students from other countries. They might not speak in a loud voice, which doesn't mean their comment isn't as important or anything, right? But Americans tend to speak louder. Let me get you two, what you were chatting about, yes. What's that?
No, we just have yeah, it's same in my country too. Like since we're from Nepal,
Oh, okay.
for us to like in America, we just say hi and we just hug each other, right? But in our country, it's not like that. If we do that, it's like, oh, we're dating. It's not like.
Oh, you
that.
wouldn't hug unless
No,
there's
no,
a
no.
more personal
Yeah, it's
relationship,
very-
right?
it's not
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. But then there are other countries, all the spectrum, right? So Americans will do a little hug, but business associates probably don't. But there are other countries that are more touchy and feely than Americans.
Latin
The
America.
French.
The French, they do a kiss, but they don't really hug. They just do like
Latin
this,
America is very touchy feely.
Yeah, and Turkey too. Turkey is very touchy-feely. Male, female, if they're friends, they kiss each other on the cheek and hug all the time, right? Latin America, Southern European,
What do they do in
France, he
France?
was just
Yeah.
mentioning. But they're maybe not as huggy, touchy as Italians, let's say. They may hug a little stronger and longer or something, yeah. Diego,
I was gonna say it's funny that you mentioned like Japan is a little bit more beating around the bush because I actually find like that Eastern European people from European countries are way more blunt than Americans
is that
are.
true?
At least that's my
Direct?
Yes,
yeah, like
Absolutely.
more
Americans
Eastern
is-
European
you
countries.
know Germans too.
This
Germans
is
are
the
very
huge
direct.
difference. Americans are indirect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Completely
Oh.
indirect.
and that's a spectrum again,
And this is the issue, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I had friends from like Poland and Bulgaria, and they would just like tell you to your face how they were feeling, and I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's important if it's related to business, you will kind of create a job, like not job, like project, and it's average. And Americans say like, oh, you did a great job, but you need to fix something. Eastern Europeans,
that's,
you did a piece of crap. You
exactly,
have to
yeah. Fix that, yeah.
fix that immediately. That's the difference.
Yeah, so it's a spectrum, right? So Japanese are more polite than Americans, but Americans are more polite than Eastern Europeans.
Yeah.
Or we could say Eastern Europeans are more direct than Americans who are more direct than Japanese, right? There's no right or wrong here, right?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
different ways
That's
of
true.
communicating. Let's take one more and then I'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, I've heard it said that Americans and people from the Mediterranean are often very animated when they speak,
Oh, yes.
speaking a lot with their hands,
Yes. You
which
see
is
that
not
with
the
me, right?
case in a lot of other countries.
Yeah. Mhm.
In a
Very,
lot of
very
Eastern
much so.
European countries, you kind
Very
of sit
animated.
stoically and you speak,
Mhm.
and that's it. And
You don't
really
move much, you don't use your hands, you don't use facial gestures that much, your face doesn't really express as much as Mediterranean people might do, right? Yeah. Anyway, next here, oh, backward translation, you know, you all have used Google Translate here or there, I'm sure. You know, if you translate something, although sometimes on Google Translate, it gets it back because it's the same system it uses, but if you get to translators and you get two different translators and you translate something, let's say from French to English, and then a different translator translates it back from English to French, you're not gonna get the exact same thing necessarily, right? So things get lost in translation. Literally, they do get lost in translation.
Kind of interesting because I've run things through Google Translate before. And if you run it enough times, you watch as the sentence just slowly devolves, like in front of your eyes.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
when you do a longer sentence, right, yeah, yeah. So effects of religion, values and attitudes. Religious effects, business operations can be affected by religion. How so? It could be the hours of operations, it could be the days that they are open or closed. So in the United States and most of the world actually, Saturday and Sunday are days off. Some other parts of the world, Fridays and Saturdays are the days off because Friday is kind of like a Sunday in Islam, right? In the Muslim world, Friday is the big religious day and prayer day versus Sunday in the traditionally Christian countries, right? They go to church on Sunday and Muslims go to mosque on Friday. So the praying times that Muslims pray 5 times a day, and it has to be exactly at a specific time. And that's 5 times throughout the day between when the sun comes up until the sun goes down. So 3 times could easily happen during work hours, right? So they have to make the accommodations. In the United States, by law, you have to accommodate your employees for their religious practices, right? Unless it's impossible. You know, if you're a pilot, you can't just say, oops, I gotta go pray real quick and leave it on autopilot or something. You wouldn't be able to do that. Diego?
I remember I was in Tel Aviv and it was the day of the Sabbath.
Yes, Friday, right?
Yeah.
Friday, yeah.
I thought
Jewish is
Saturday,
Friday as well.
Friday night to Saturday night.
Yeah,
Okay, yes.
Shabbat.
Friday night to Saturday night. And the elevators in the hotel would go floor by floor without you like having to touch the button because you're not allowed to do work.
Oh, really?
That's
Yeah.
true, that's true.
You
Yeah,
can't
so,
even
like-
touch the button?
No, you can't. So like you would just hop on and like on that day specifically, you would have to go floor by floor all the way to your specific floor.
Because they stop at every floor.
Yeah, because they stop at every
Oh,
floor,
wow,
so you don't
that's
touch the
odd,
button.
that's a waste of, yeah, what a waste of time and resources right there. Anyway, manufacturing and marketing products. How can it have an effect on that?
Try to sell pork in
Saudi
Muslim-
Arabia.
In Muslim countries, yeah.
Try to sell pork, nobody's gonna buy it, right? It's actually, some places it's illegal probably to sell, right? Or try to sell beef in India. Well, there's beef in India, but, probably not to, you can't sell it to the masses, right?
I mean, it's not about business.
Yeah, well, that is about business.
If you're trying to sell something which it's hard to sell,
Oh, yeah, you would be
different work,
successful.
like struggle,
Yes, yeah.
suffering.
Yes, yeah. Observance of holidays besides the weekends, you know, in traditionally Christian countries, you have Christmas holidays, you have, you know, some countries give you Easter holidays, not the United States, but other countries do, right? And other countries you have different holidays, right? And working days and working hours, as I mentioned, right? The weekends especially. Values are basic beliefs or philosophies that are pervasive in a society. And when you go and do business in another country, you have to operate within their values. It's hard to go against their values, right? Especially if you want them to buy your products. If you're selling products somewhere to in a country that values environmentalism, and you're going to sell products that highly damage the environment, that is going to be a problem, right? Diego?
Would you say that like Americanization has been kind of going against that idea of like working within people's values? Because I feel like it's changed.
No, countries always imitate America. They all Europe, Latin America, probably Eastern Europe too, they all look at America, what are they doing? We're gonna do that too.
Mhm.
This has been going on for decades. This is nothing new.
Oh, so, but isn't that itself a shift in values of like,
Yeah, America has a lot of influence on the rest of the world when it comes to values. You know what, the movie industry alone, Hollywood, has a lot of influence,
yeah,
right? So, and still does. A lot of countries are still looking at America because we are the, probably most successful country in the world economically, right? For right now, but still, so they're looking at what we're doing. And values are changing and attitudes are changing. Yes, Diego?
I was gonna say, I was talking to some of my Scottish friends once, and I was kind of like, we were talking about accents and how sometimes I have a hard time understanding certain accents in Scotland.
Scottish ones is hard
Yeah,
to understand, yeah.
And I asked them, hey, why do you understand my accent so clearly? And they said, probably because we watch just a lot of American movies.
Yes, yes.
That's true.
Yes, even in the British accent sometimes, unless they're from like unless they have a very posh accent, I should say, right? Very proper English. Sometimes it's hard to understand. Speak somebody from Northern England.
Yeah, probably. just
Very
London.
difficult to understand. I taught a semester in England last fall. And, I would meet people I couldn't understand, but they understand us. Yeah.
Like deep Glaswegian accent is not
Yeah.
much, yeah.
Feelings and opinions, attitudes are kind of connected to values and it's a lot of it is also generational. Attitudes change towards things, what's the attitude towards, what are some of the attitudes that have changed in generations that you may have that maybe your parents or grandparents don't have? Ellen?
Racism is a lot less socially acceptable nowadays than it used to be.
Yes, maybe your grandparents were like making racial remarks and had those racist feelings or anything like that. Now it's less acceptable, right? Hopefully that's true. Sometimes I wonder, sometimes I think it's coming back, honestly, right? Diego?
This one's actually curious, but like the concept of saving money when you're younger,
Yes.
I feel like it's a huge shift. Like I was telling my grandfather how I'm like setting up certain like savings accounts and things like that. And he's like, why are you doing that? You have time. And I'm like, I really don't.
Yeah. They should push you actually to do that. Yeah, you know what? If you have a job, you should immediately start saving for retirement. I wish somebody told me that. My parents didn't tell me that. Nobody told me that. If I had started saving when I first started working, I wouldn't have to worry about retirement. All right, now, well, I kind of do, kind of don't, but I would retire much wealthier if I had started saving when I started working, right? Yeah, so savings, the relationship with money, right? What else? Yes, Alexandra.
Having kids early.
Mm.
So I
Having
was
kids
at a,
really, big
I
one.
was at a family gathering a while ago with my boyfriend's side of the family, and they're a lot more traditional. And they're like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "I'm 25." And they're like, "Oh yeah, you're still in baby range." And I was like,
Still, you're just barely starting. Yeah, yeah. Give it another 15 years, right? Yeah, or at least 10 years, like, yeah. Yeah, definitely, people started, well, it depends again on where you live, and that's all based on attitudes and cultures, right? And values and how you grow up. A lot of it is based on education level. Usually the more education you have, the more you're going to put off having children, right? Yes, no.
Yeah, it's like a Bay Area thing too, like, you find like in the Bay Area, a lot of people get married, have kids a lot older, just because like, it's the general mindset in the area, a lot of people like focusing on their career, focusing on their
Yes.
education.
Which is
So
kind
that
of a
comes,
smart
like,
thing to do.
later. But like, yeah, you go outwards, and like, especially like in the South and the Midwest, you'll easily find people like married at 18, fresh out.
Oh, definitely, at 20, they have 2 kids already, right? Yes, yes.
I talked to a lot of
Yes.
friends about like when the ideal age is for them when they want to have kids, and like almost me and all my friends agree, okay, well, probably not until we're in like our early 30s,
Yeah,
right?
That's
Like
very
30 to like 32, 35.
35, yeah.
That's like a good age range, because then you still have enough energy to put in the kids, but then you're not like, you're not sacrificing your 20s as well, because like, but then you go outside of like the Bay Area, and there's like people that are already having kids, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what the heck?
I mean, yeah, I had
You just
kids later.
graduated high school, like
Yeah.
what are you doing?
I had kids later and I know people my age that already are now starting to have grandchildren. I'm like, wow, you know, so they had kids early and their kids have kids early. So like my daughter is already saying, like what you said, between around 30, she says, right? She won't have kids before that, yeah. So, but anyway, Diego?
I remember the parent story for me is because my mom, I think, had me at like 32. But they had, technically, that by Mexican standards, that's really late.
But yes,
So they had, my family had stopped asking if they were gonna have kids.
They-
Because they thought
they
it was a
gave up.
sensitive topic.
yeah, they gave up, yeah. Anyway, let's go on here. So, manners and customs vary across culture, right? And you need to know what the manners and customs are in a different country. Otherwise, you might embarrass or offend people or make yourself look stupid, like an idiot. They're saying you go over there, you want to gain their business, but they don't even, and then you go there and you don't even know how to say hello or something like that, or how to greet them. Material culture, a direct result of technology best demonstrated by economic, social, financial, and marketing infrastructure of a society, and that varies across the world, right? Material culture, you know, the developing countries, for example, tend to have children when they're younger. The developed countries are putting having children off because they want to achieve more, while the lower developing countries may see having children as a security for their retirement, for their future, right? Aesthetics, what's beautiful?
Subjective.
It's all subjective. Everybody has a different interpretation of beautiful, right? And it's also culturally determined. Colors, what colors are pretty? What hairstyles are pretty? What skin color is considered beautiful? Unfortunately, the Western world is very dominant and makes it sound like the lighter the better, which is not absolutely not the case, right? But that's because West American, again, Americanized, right? Beauty is always in the eye of the beholder. That's a very good term, right? Even people in the same culture might find different things beautiful. But some things are just culturally not acceptable. When it comes to clothes, for example, or, you know, aesthetics in general are viewed differently in different cultures. And next we have education. Education level really affects even people within the same region and culture have different value systems, different beliefs and so forth based on their culture. What are some of the things that you can see just within the Bay Area? Where or within California, let's say, what the areas that we're used to or we're familiar with. When you compare people with different levels of education or groups with different level of education, how do their values vary? Besides children, we already talked about having children. Yes, no.
Once you hit like a certain point, in education, a lot of people with lower education value much more like working and like sort of just doubling down on that to provide for themselves. You see that in the areas.
You mean the lower educated population is more into, I gotta work and make more money? Yeah, what do you think that's a result of the fact that because they don't have education, they have to work, they do blue collar jobs versus the ones that are educated tend to end up in jobs where they don't have to kill themselves to make good money, right? Yeah, so that might be a result of that, that reflects in the culture then, right? Yes, Diego?
I think for the most part, like cities that are around very big non-denomination like universities are typically more liberal.
Oh, yes, where they're not religiously influenced,
Yeah.
right? Yes, yeah, and that they tend to be more educated, actually. Yeah, if you look at non-denominational organizations like educational institutions and yeah, they do tend to be more liberal. Actually, the more educated the people, the more liberal they are too. When you look at that from a statistical perspective, the more educated people are, the less religious they are statistically as well, right? So yes.
Higher education also tends to place an emphasis on generalism. So beyond specializing in whatever field someone chooses to specialize in, there's an idea that the university educated need to be competent in all aspects of society.
Very
and should
good.
therefore have a base level of knowledge in everything.
Yes, very, very good point about education. And this is what employers look at when they hire people. They don't necessarily look for a specific degree when they hire people with a 4-year degree, although it helps. But, you know, a lot of people get degrees that, you know, typically you probably couldn't get a job in that field, like, anthropological art history or something like that. How many jobs are there? Those people are going to work for a business, but the business will hire them because they know they have the general education and they know they have taught how to critically think and how to question and hopefully if the university did a good job, right? But that's what we're trying to do. And I always try to emphasize critical thinking is so important for you all, you know, more important than memorizing some business terms or something like that, because you can always look up things if you don't know something. Diego, one more comment and then.
I was gonna say, I feel like that reflects more on the American education standard, right? Because in other parts of the country, they're a little bit more, I mean, not country, world, they're a little bit more specialized.
Actually,
In the UK, at least, they like, once you enter into university, you don't really do GE classes.
yes, because you already learn all of that in high school. The high school systems in other countries is much higher than the high school system here. When I came to transfer to the United States, my university credits, I got 36 units for my high school classes, college credits, 36 units. That's over a year of university. A lot of it was in math and science and languages, right? 36 units I got credit for. Right? And they were not, we didn't have AP classes or honors. We didn't have that system, right? Yeah. And then the UK, a master's, I mean, a bachelor's degree is only 3 years, right? Because you already have all that general education. So that's why their higher education system is more specialized in the field, right? Yeah. So, and here you go to a 4-year college, first 2 years, it's kind of general education. And then you got the introductory classes. You really only technically have 30 or 40 units of upper division classes in your major, which doesn't even make you a specialist. Just gives you some more deeper knowledge into the subject until you go either work in that industry or get a master's degree. Anyway, education level also, of course, is related to the socioeconomic status of and economic growth of the country. Level of education must be such that the host country personnel can work and be trained in a variety of jobs. If you try setting up a tech company that you need a lot of software engineers that you want to hire locally, you have to make sure that those are available, that the people have that type of education level to fill those jobs, all right? Some countries emphasize different educational specialties. Here's an example: South Korea and Japan stress education and sciences and engineering. I think India too, math probably. A lot of math is stressed in a lot of other countries. Europe, Middle East, math is big, right? Russia and math. Is that true?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Before maybe 2010.
So
because
for a
now
long
it's
time already, not just recently.
messed up with education system.
Oh, now they're messed up. Yeah, like a lot of places in the world. India, engineering and software development. I think India is also still in math, pretty big too. So, yeah, and US is, and in the US you get everything, because we're also so big, right? We're so big. So many different educational institutions. We can offer a lot. Yeah, Diego?
I think it was interesting because Obama made a speech, I forget if it was during his first or second term, where he praised like the increase in like STEM applicants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think since then there has been an increasing trend of like focusing on STEM courses rather than other educational courses.
Yeah, I think STEM is kind of, you know, in the general education or lower education, but I mean, in the high schools, STEM is lacking in the United States. End of story. You don't learn enough STEM subject, right? The math level that you have to finish high school here is, what is it, Algebra 1? Algebra
Yeah.
2. I mean, when I finished high school, I had to finish Calculus 2 in high school, right? So huge difference.
Even higher level.
You know, it could be even higher, depends what track you take. You know, we had
Because I remember we finished high school education with integrals and kind of this logarithm.
I did 3 levels of calculus. I did, in Germany, it's calculus 1, 2, and 3, but I think
Mhm.
calculus
Like the
2,
whole
Finished your high school in Germany?
yes, I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How PC
Yeah.
satisfies.
Yeah.
You know, we do need to work more on STEM. I think the thing we really, really need to work on in this country is math. I still get students, they tell me I hate math. Nobody really hates math, they just haven't been taught properly. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's no reason to hate math. It's actually very logical. It really makes sense. It's rational. It's not like, oh, up to interpretation or this or that, like other subjects. But it hasn't been taught properly. That's the problem.
Middle school didn't even offer geometry.
Your middle school didn't offer geometry? Wow. Wow, yeah, and yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I couldn't advance into it, but I had to take.
yeah, my
for
kids did
one
geometry in
or
middle
two.
school, I remember. Anyway, but you know, we do have great higher education systems in America, top universities, you know, MIT, UCLA, and so forth, right? So it's not like we're lacking in the higher education, but we are lacking in educating the general population properly. Some countries have tiered systems of higher education with prestige programs and universities. We have that too. A lot of countries have that, right? Social institutions are the way people in a society relate to one another or within group settings, right? So you have reference groups, who you compare yourself to or who you think about. What would these people say? They could be your friends group. Reference groups could be if you're an athlete, maybe your athletic friends, right? If you belong to a church, maybe your church people. If you're a musician, maybe your reference group would be other musicians, right? That have all different kind of beliefs and cultures, like subcultures within a certain culture also, right? Social stratification is the extent to which groups are at the top of the social pyramid and then exert control over others at the lower level of the pyramid. So, you know, it's all related to your socioeconomic status, unfortunately, right? And then also where you are in social standing. Sometimes it could be a group with the same status, financial statuses, but there's this one that is was a great social climber and everybody wants to, you know, reach up to that level and be their friend or something like that, right? So that's like, I'll not, it's not a very friendly system when you have anytime you have a pyramid system where there's something on the top that is, yes, Ellen?
Oh, the UK is rather famous for the rigidity of their system, right? Like, it's commented on. A lot of British people, when they come to America, are surprised by just how less important class is in the United States. And like in the UK, people's accents are a dead giveaway
Immediately
of
accents,
class,
yes,
and it's very common for people to isolate within their class and not interact with
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
Especially people
and not just
in
the
a
UK,
lower
a lot of
class, yeah.
countries are like that. A lot of, you know, that's something that's very special in the United States, especially in Silicon Valley. You can go, you sit at a cafe and the person next to you could be super wealthy, super educated, could be an inventor. You know, you wouldn't know. And they talk to each other, right? And somebody from very high level has no problem talking to somebody from a low level here. And people are more likely to mix here than in other countries, yeah. Which is great, I think, yeah. Okay, here's something that's going to be your homework assignment, by the way. There are two different theories. I'm going to focus on the Hofstadter. You can read about the other one in the textbook. Hopefully you already read it, right? So Hofstadter compares 5 different elements about culture and has a actually table and rates them in terms of numbers, right? So individualism versus collectivism. That is, let me just peek ahead, make sure I don't talk ahead of myself. 1 second. Yeah, okay. So individualism is what is present in the United States, right? It's all about us and my achievement, and I'm standing out and I want all the praise and I am self-motivated and all that stuff, right? Collectivism is when societies more take like the group approach in countries like Japan or India and Southern European countries where it's like us, the us approach. It's more about the groups rather than you standing out individually. It's actually socially sometimes unacceptable to receive to want praise for something, individual praise. No, you want group praise. You belong to a group. Yes.
I have
a very weirdly kind of specific example
Okay.
on this specifically with Japan.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you know about Carlos Ghosn, the Nissan executive. Do
I
you know about Carlos Ghosn?
Mhm.
It is one of the most fascinating cases in international business. So he's this French executive, Lebanese born, and he goes and there's this French company called Renault.
Yes, I
And
know.
he's the CEO person of Renault. And Renault buys a large portion of stock in Nissan, which at the point in time when they bought it was failing. They had too many car lines, etc. Carlos Ghosn steps in as CEO of Nissan. He reworks their entire lineup, simplifies their car lineup, etc. Nissan is now going up. However, the old Japanese business leadership at Nissan is culturally different from the new French leadership, and they don't like the fact that Carlos Ghosn is taking so much credit for the revival of Nissan.
Yes.
And they also don't like the fact that that he's making like a ton of money. And so Carlos Ghosn is going through with these plans to merge Renault with Nissan fully. And so right before he's about to do that, literally as he's signing the papers on his jet on the tarmac, Japanese police come out and they arrest him. They throw him in jail, and he knows that Japan has a 99% conviction rate. So he knows that he's probably not going to get a fair trial.
Mhm.
And so basically what he does is he hires this US ex-Marine and his son, and they smuggle him out of Japan
Wow.
in a box.
Wow.
Yeah, and they get him through the airport, they put him on a plane, and they smuggle him back to Lebanon, where he is
Wow,
currently
and
right now.
they're not gonna extradite him now.
Yeah.
Wow,
They-
wow.
Lebanon has a policy that they don't expedite their own citizens.
Yeah, what an interesting story. Yeah, yeah. A lot of countries don't extradite their own people, but yeah. Yeah, I can see that the Japanese employees were very upset about that, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's a collectivism versus individualism. Power distance is like, the distance between the top person in the company and the lowest person, right? Some countries have, again, those that have a very pyramid system where there are very few on top and a lot at the bottom, which still has, most large companies are like that, but when there are a lot of layers in between, you have a very, very steep pyramid organization, or you can have one that's more flat, that only has 3 or 4 levels, right? US, the younger, more progressive companies sometimes tend to have less levels. Traditionally, they would have the lowest level employee and then the senior position this, the director position that, the senior director, the top director, blah, 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 blah. There are like 10 levels in between, right? So that also determines how people behave and how they communicate with an organization. The longer the way from the top to the bottom, the less efficient the communication between the levels, right? Yeah. Masculine versus feminine has nothing to do with machismo. What does it have to do with? Maybe those of you that did read the chapter before coming to class. It's more, yes, go ahead.
Like masculine is more like the figure like of the chief or like I don't know, the business head, or feminine is more like caring and self and
Yes, yeah, much masculine cultures are more like authoritative, less emotional, less caretaking, less worrying about others, right? And feminine is more cultures that are more like, about relationship building and things like that, right? So what do you think where do the United States falls in? Let's compare the United States to Lebanon, since somebody brought up Lebanon. What is United States more masculine or Lebanon more masculine? The United States is more masculine, yeah. A lot of actually Middle Eastern countries and Latin American countries are more feminine. Right? You'll learn that when you do your homework, by the way. Uncertainty avoidance, some cultures just want to know for sure what's going to happen, and others are okay with taking risk. United States has a higher tolerance towards risk than people in other countries, right? And if you go do business in a country that doesn't have that, you have to change your strategy based on that. Time orientation, how important it is to be on time, or can you be late? Can you go over in meetings, or do you have to start and stop the meeting on time? has gotten pretty well. When I first came here to the States and I started working and I was going to meetings, they were always overtime. Now they just stop. They go maybe 5 minutes max. After 5 minutes, people start leaving anyway. They just get up and leave. It's okay to do that now, right? Anyway, so your homework is about that, the country assignment homework, right? Let me see. Cultural metaphors, I'm not gonna go over all of them, but all countries have some kind of metaphors that are born on the culture. I'll mention the German one, orchestra conductors, performance, society, education, and politics. Has to do with what Germans also value. And, they talk about German engineering is so good and so precise. There is a truth to that, I can tell you, right? Very, very exact and things have to be done in a certain order. British house, I don't know, laying the foundation, building the brick house, living in the brick house, having a strong foundation. French, I thought it was all about cheese and wine. So, which it is, right? Yeah. Here we have one on Japan. As far as cultural dimensions, they do a slight bow and handshake are now appropriate, I guess nowadays it is, right? Business card etiquettes, you would really take the business card with both hands if a Japanese person hands you a business card. Here you just throw it in your pocket or something like that. You wouldn't do that. You would just hold it in your hand and show it that you value it, right?
You give it with 2 hands, right?
I guess you give it with 2 hands too, and you take it with 2 hands. It's not appropriate to look somebody directly in the eye. In the United States, we learn from communication, even when I do like a group presentation like this, right? I do meet you all occasionally somebody's eyes, right? We learn to do that. In other countries, it's not okay, right? But even here, you kind of glance, and when you're having a conversation with one person, you kind of look back and forth and you run. But if you just continue staring them in the eye, eventually they start becoming kind of feeling uncomfortable. Why are they looking at me? And are they going to look away or not? I'm picking on Diego right now. So, host and title. I mean, let your host your title and rank. No. That's something that they value in Japan, I guess, yeah. I'm gonna skip this slide just because it's more about Japan. Arabic cultures, avoid sitting so the sole of somebody's shoe shows. I have never confirmed that with somebody from an Arabic culture. I don't really know if it's true. I know sometimes these things aren't necessarily true. Does anybody know somebody from an Arabic culture? Yes?
It's not. For us, it's not just like sitting on it. If the shoe is like flipped over, my mom would always go put the shoe back.
Oh, after you take them off.
Yeah.
We have that in Turkey too. My mom used to say, if it's flipped over, that person is gonna die. So, but this is about sitting, like how he's sitting, like maybe it's about the crossing legs that's kind of rude, right? Yeah.
I think it's also because in a lot of Arab countries, shoes are, and
Dirty.
the bottom of one's feet are seen as like a very dirty thing,
Well, they are dirty.
which is why it was a huge insult when George Bush got the shoe thrown at him.
Oh, yes,
because,
that's right, that's right.
The
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
was making
yeah.
like a big point
Yeah.
about
I mean,
how much
if you think about it, shoes are the dirtiest piece of clothing you're wearing. I mean, most cultures, a lot of cultures are not allowing shoes inside the house, right?
Yeah.
Including my house. You don't come in with shoes.
You leave it at the door.
The left hand is viewed as unclean. I'm not gonna go into why. I don't know if that's even really practiced anymore, but I should stand up while I say that. Good posture is very imperative. Foreign business representatives should not inquire about people's wives or families. In other cultures, it's very common. How's your daughter doing or something? Maybe in an Arab culture that might be offensive. Like, what do you want from my daughter or from my wife? What is it to you? Because culturally. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. People are just different. When we learn these things about culture, we shouldn't ridicule them about it or say, oh, how could they do that? That's ridiculous. I could never do that. That's not true. That's because you learned something else and they learned something else. So do not overly praise possessions either, because it might look like you're expecting them to give it. You tell them, oh, that's such a beautiful bracelet. Oh, I love your bracelet. And then they're tempted to give it to you as a gesture because you love it so much. So don't do it unless you want the bracelet. Yeah. Here's someone Latin America. You can read this on your own. I think a lot of us are very familiar with Latin American culture. A country's culture affects attitudes towards work, management style differ, right? When developing new products, managers must consider, along with many other aspects of marketing, right? What do we need to change in our marketing efforts because of the culture? Do we need to change the product? Do we need to change the way we communicate? Advertising campaigns must be tailored carefully, right? Culture has an impact on communication styles. Here's just a funny thing. Some US-based business would not be understood by foreign business representatives. Flying by the seat of my pants. What does that mean anyway? I don't know. What does it mean? Yeah.
It's just sort of like you're like always on the edge, or like you're on the edge of something, and you're like all scatterbrained, and you're like.
Yeah. See, I've been here for so long, I still don't know what that means, right? On the same wavelength, I do understand that. So when you use those terms, don't expect people to understand it that weren't born and raised here, right? Shotgun approach. I didn't know that until recently, like really fast or something.
No,
What is it?
it's when you, for example, like let's use college admissions. This is like the
Yes.
most, I guess, common use of the word shotgun approach, but it's like you apply, you do a bunch of things so that you maximize your chances of getting something.
Okay, so you apply for as much as possible.
You apply for as many.
With as little effort as possible.
No.
Oh, just
You
as
will-
much as possible.
Well, you still want to
See,
give it a lot of effort.
which one hits, which one hits the target?
Yeah, so the idea is to shoot at like a bunch of targets, and then the idea is that if you shoot like one or two, then you might miss those one or two, but if you shoot like a bunch, then you're bound to hit
I
at
see,
least
I
something.
get it. Thanks for explaining that. Anyway, 10K, other countries don't call 1,000K, right? I don't even know why it's K. Is that the letter K for 1,000?
Kilo is the prefix for thousand.
Oh, okay, is that why they call it that? Belly up, anyway, overview. If it ain't broken, they don't fix it.
Over.
This is already bad because ain't is not really a grammatically correct word, right? So, let it throw it on the wall and see what sticks. Let's see how it plays out. So those things are not necessarily understood by other countries.
You know, you know, when I see these in the day to day, I'm like, yeah, these are phrases. This is fine. Now when I'm reading it up here, I'm like, why do we say this?
They're
Like,
old
let's
phrases.
get
I mean,
somebody
this
to-
one, it ain't overkill fat lady sings. It took me forever to really understand that.
What is that?
Out of context.
Somebody explain what it means. Yes, Ellen.
So it is.
We have 5
actually,
more minutes, by the way,
A
sir.
reference to opera, because typically, the operas would conclude
With the,
with a female solo, and usually
Yes.
it was a very big woman
best
singing a very
part.
powerful solo.
yeah.
And to get the powerful voice, you have to be a big person.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
the
why
thing.
the opera isn't over.
It's the
until
highlight. The
sings.
highlight is when the fat lady sings. That's the highlight of the
So
opera.
you're like, we're not done yet.
Yeah.
I still have more, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of related to that, I just discovered that basking in the limelight is referring to like old spotlights used to be made from like from